Today we're going to understand three very important concepts in statistics: variables, confounding variables, and causation. These ideas are fundamental if you're working in data science, biology, or machine learning. Let's start with the simplest one: variables. A variable is anything that can change. For example, your age, your weight, how many hours you study, or how much you exercise. In most studies, we usually have two types of variables: the independent variable, which is what we think is causing something, and the dependent variable, which is the outcome we measure. A confounding variable is a hidden factor that influences both the cause and the outcome, making it look like there's a relationship when there might not be, or at least not the one we think. Let's look at a classic example. We often see that ice cream sales and drowning deaths increase at the same time. At first glance, you might think, does eating ice cream cause drowning? Of course not. The real reason is a third factor: temperature. During the summer, when the weather is hot, people buy more ice cream. At the same time, more people go swimming, which unfortunately increases the risk of drowning. So temperature is the hidden variable affecting both. This is exactly what a confounding variable does. It creates a misleading connection between two variables that aren't directly causing each other. Causation means that one variable directly causes a change in another. In other words, if you change one thing, it will actually produce an effect on something else. A strong example of this is smoking and lung cancer. Scientists don't just see that smokers tend to have more lung cancer. They've shown that smoking actually causes it. How do we know this? First, there is strong biological evidence. Harmful chemicals in cigarettes damage lung cells. Second, controlled studies consistently show that people who smoke have a much higher risk of developing lung cancer. And third, we understand the mechanism, how the damage happens at the cellular level over time. So this isn't just a coincidence or correlation. It's a true cause and effect relationship. That's what causation looks like. Let's clarify one of the most important ideas in statistics: correlation versus causation. Correlation simply means that two variables move together. When one increases, the other tends to increase or decrease at the same time. But causation is different. Causation means that one variable actually produces a change in another. And here's the key rule you should always remember: correlation does not imply causation. Just because two things happen together doesn't mean one is causing the other. For example, you might notice that when there are more firefighters at a fire, there is usually more damage. So does that mean firefighters cause more damage? Of course not. The real reason is that bigger fires cause both more firefighters are needed and naturally more damage occurs. So the size of the fire is the hidden factor connecting the two. This is why it's so important to look deeper before concluding causation. Let's start with a simple real-world scenario. Imagine a study finds that people who exercise more tend to lose more weight. At first, this sounds pretty intuitive, right? Now, let's break this down using variables. In this case, the independent variable, what we think might be influencing the outcome, is the amount of exercise. The dependent variable, the result we're observing, is weight loss. So, essentially, we're asking, does increasing exercise lead to greater weight loss? These two, exercise and weight, are the main variables we're focusing on in this study. But as we'll see later, things are not always as simple as they seem. Now, let's take a closer look at what might be influencing this relationship. There are several possible confounding variables we need to consider. For example, diet, whether someone eats healthy food or mostly junk food, can have a huge impact on weight loss. Sleep quality is another factor. People who sleep well often have better overall health and metabolism. Then there's genetics. Some people naturally burn calories faster than others. And even medications can affect how the body gains or loses weight. So, why do we call these confounders? Because they influence both sides of the equation. They affect how much a person exercises, and at the same time, they also affect how much weight that person loses. This makes it harder to tell whether exercise alone is really causing the weight loss. Now, how do we actually prove causation? To say that exercise truly causes weight loss, we need to show that exercise directly leads to the change, while everything else stays the same. In other words, we have to control all the other factors. The best way to do this is through something called a randomized controlled trial, or RCT. In this type of study, we keep things like diet, sleep, and lifestyle as consistent as possible across participants. Then, we only change one thing, the amount of exercise. If we observe that weight changes as a result, then we can confidently say that exercise is causing the weight loss. That's what it takes to move from just observing a relationship to actually proving causation. Let's simplify everything with a quick intuition. First, variables. These are just things that can change. In our example, that's exercise and weight. Next, confounders. These are the hidden factors that can secretly mess things up. Things like diet and sleep can influence both how much you exercise and how much weight you lose. And finally, causation. This is what we really want to understand. Does exercise truly cause weight loss? The answer is only if we prove it carefully by controlling all those hidden confounding factors. So always remember, what you see in data isn't always the full story.